Hello, everybody. Welcome or welcome back to Tiny Tiger Collective. I'm Helena, and I'm coming to you today with an update, reflection, and cozy conversation all about how I've been working with my planners in the last quarter of the year, but also looking forward into the last 3 months of 2025 and how I'm going to maintain my existing lineup while looking towards 2026 and the good habits that I would like to bring in into the new year as I cultivate more planner peace. On this channel, I've posted two quarterly updates earlier in the year. One in late March, in which I reflect upon the first 3 months with my big planner lineup. Another in the middle of the year, reflecting on how things were going after half a year working within my planners and my journals, including some of my failures and some of the things that I was excited to introduce. In this video, it's going to be less of a review of the last 3 months because, in many ways, I've maintained much of my journaling practices from my previous two updates, with a couple of exceptions that I'll talk through. But I wanted to be true to my mindset at this time of the year, in which I am barely surviving, struggling to keep my head above water in the busiest teaching semester I've ever experienced at my university, while leaning heavily on my journaling ecosystem to help me find moments for rest and restoration in a period of my life where I can see the hints of burnout starting to creep in. So 2025 was for me the year of experimenting with a compartmentalized system. Last year, I tried to manage my entire life in one hobonichi cousin. And while there were so many benefits to that approach, there were also a lot of things that didn't work with the way that I think my brain functions and also the season of my life. So I thought, why not for 2025 experiment with having different books for the different domains of my life? And I knew going into 2025 that there were going to be a lot of challenges with that approach, but almost deliberately swinging the pendulum all the way to the other side from a one book system to a multiple book system would allow me to really experience the full gamut of that planning approach and allow me in 2026 to come to a more suitable balance for my unique purposes. So let me start with the daily journals that I have been using since midway through the year. And one of those that you would have seen on my channel for months now, if you've been following me, is my daily toddler journal. This little red book with the very sweet Mr. and Mrs. Inouye in their red bus has been the sweetest partner in documenting the joyful, precious, everyday memories with my 3-year-old son. We started our new year together, taking a hike, and without fail, I have updated this journal every day, sometimes writing a little bit more than others and making up for it by sticking in ephemera and my son's drawings, paintings that he brings home from daycare, as well as little photographs that I've printed off with my Instax Mini Evo. So now as we're moving from September into October, this journal has been going strong. Usually every day, I'll spend 2 minutes updating the left-hand column with some of the highlights of what we got up to as a family. So it might be what time my son woke up, the activities that we got up to during the day, and then when he got to bed. And then on the right-hand column, where I've got the time, which may be every 2 or 3 days, I'll take no more than 15-20 minutes and write down some of the most memorable experiences, interactions, conversations, games that we played that I want to store in this treasure trove of memories. If you're new to my channel, you may not know that this was the second Hobonichi A6 techo that I kept for my son. This was in fact the very first hobonichi planner that I purchased. And this documented approximately from when my son was 6 months old to when he was a year and a half. And while there was a little bit of a break in between those two A6 techos, I've really adored this journaling practice. And so one of my purchases for Hobonichi's 2026 lineup was another A6 techo in this sweet Moomin cover that will serve as my son's daily toddler journal as we move into 2026. And you'll see that over this past couple of days, I couldn't wait, and I consecrated the pages with these stunning washi stickers from my collaboration with the washi tape shop. In 2025, I purchased my first 2 Hobonichi weeks, even though previously I had dismissed this format as being too small, too superfluous for my planning needs. I'm a full-time academic working in a business school, and I am verbose. I love to write and write and write, and some of you will know I love to talk and talk and talk. I deliver 2-hour lectures in my subjects, so recording a video in which I talk about my passion for stationery for an hour is absolutely nothing to me. If it was up to me, I would give everybody a 15-minute break and we would come back and I'd talk for another hour. But this year, I've really enjoyed keeping these 2 Hobonichi weeks in order to document my work here in the Unsoro Bijitsukai cover, and then my health and wellness following the detailed guides that Alison from Little Coco Studio has shared on her YouTube channel in order to track my evolving health and mental health needs. This planner definitely also saw its changes and refinements over time. Previously, I kept the left-hand side as a task manager, drawing in these little columns in pencil myself so that on the left-hand side, I could track events, meetings, appointments, student consultations. On the right-hand side, I would then track all the tasks that I needed to do. Over here on the right-hand page, I would note down every week my work priorities for that week. So the minimum things that I was going to prioritize and achieve in order to make sure that I felt like I was moving the needle forward in my work and career goals. Then I would also come back at the end of the week and record what I thought were my weekly wins. And they could be anything from conventional achievements, like getting a journal article accepted, but they were also things like setting boundaries and saying no to tasks that took me away from my overarching goals. Soon, however, I found that tracking my tasks here didn't work very well because there would be some days where I had more tasks than this short row would allow. And when I skipped tasks or needed to move tasks down to later days or future weeks, it was also very difficult to mark and track when tasks migrate, if I could use a bullet journaling term. So, because this got really messy and it had the opposite effect of helping me organize and achieve clarity in my work tasks, my wonderful viewers encouraged me to try the Alistair method and manage my tasks here in all the space that I was underutilizing. And this was so much easier for me to use. This just clicked with the sorts of tasks that I had and the way that my brain works. So once I switched to the Alistair method, I found that working in this book was renewed with a second wind. And I genuinely experienced greater clarity and greater ease in my work life. Now, around July and August, as you can see, I slipped off the bandwagon, particularly in these weeks between semesters when I had so few work tasks, deadlines, and commitments that I found I didn't need the use of a planner in order to stay on top of my work. But then, here as our new semester began, and I found myself plunged into the deep end with record student enrollment and class sizes. This then became my partner yet again, where I took the time to thoughtfully, meticulously draw out all of my tasks and ensure that I was staying on top of all the things that I needed to do. Unfortunately, my two hobonichi weeks in 2025 were hit with the Tomoe River paper quality inconsistency issues. One of the frustrating things about my paper in here is that I would have maybe one page that works really well with my fountain pens, and then I'll have one or two more pages that feather and bleed terribly, and thereby affecting the pages on the other side and my ability to see my writing, to see my tasks clearly. When I do come across a page that is of the usual high quality that Tomoe River paper is known for, gosh, the experience is just exquisite. Hearing the lovely feedback of my fountain pen nibs. And also, I'm finding that I adore this cream paper compared to the white paper of the standard A6, as well as the cousin. Had my paper experience with my Hobonichi weeks this year been better, I dare say I would probably have been tempted to pick up another Hobonichi weeks for 2026. There is something just so convenient about having this light little pocket planner that I can put into my work bag, take around with me to my doctor's appointments, to my dentist appointments, and be able to very clearly communicate what symptoms I've been experiencing or what tasks I need to do and all the different things I need to stay on top of with my work and with my health, respectively. This has been an absolutely wonderful tool for helping me stay on top of my range and evolving health and mental health needs. At the start of the year, I was experiencing a blend of physical health issues, particularly struggling with sleep maintenance insomnia, while also trying to improve my mental health and my struggles with CPTSD and anxiety, and also having this book as a way for me to introduce new habits and lifestyle changes that I believed would help me see a marked improvement, such as introducing more daily walks around my local neighborhood to enjoy nature, and also introducing a daily reading habit back into my life so that I can continue to engage with the beautiful literary pieces that broaden my horizons and deepen my learning. Around July, I started falling off from regularly updating this book. And that was for a really good reason. I admit there was sometimes a mixture of guilt, but also appreciation for how helpful this book has been for me in this past 9 months, that I did make a concerted effort to return. But I came to realize that me dropping off this book was actually a reflection of the fact that my mental health was better than it has been for, I dare say, the last 6 or 7 years. Perhaps that is a real testament for how valuable this book has been for my health. I confess, in the last month, some small health concerns have emerged for me again. I had some minor issues with my teeth, and I found that I could dip straight back into this book and track sensitivity and pain and be able to give my dentist a really accurate account of what symptoms I had been experiencing and for how long. And that made a significant difference in the kinds of care that she was able to suggest for me. Here on the Gold Coast in Australia, we're transitioning from winter into spring. And early spring has seen a couple of heat waves already with very hot and uncomfortable nights. So my body has been undergoing an adjustment. And I'm afraid in this transitional season, my sleep has been disrupted again. And I started experiencing a little bit of my sleep maintenance insomnia creeping back in. But I had this book, I had my habits, my trackers, all the tools at my disposal that are tried and true to help me navigate periods of bumpiness in my physical and mental health. Oh, and I've started using these Moomin blotter paper from my latest hobonichi order, and they are so wonderful to use. I don't know how I got on without these for so long. Another thing that I've been using my health and wellness tracker for is that while my mental health has overall been stronger than it's been for many years, I have noticed that there are opportunities for improvement or at least greater intentionality in how I spend my days. In the evenings, particularly during this season of my life where my teaching workload has been exceptionally high, I've come home from work every evening feeling more socially, emotionally, and mentally drained than usual. And when I'm in that state, there is nothing that I want to do more than to binge eat licorice on my couch while doom scrolling through YouTube. However, I know I'm not the first person who has noticed that that often makes my mental health much worse. So I've been experimenting this past week with trying to develop more peaceful and calming habits around my evening routines. So after dinner, I've been making myself a herbal tea. And instead of doom scrolling, I've been looking for activities that restore my energies. I've varyingly been listening to music. I've been getting into the habit of bringing all my journals with me into the dining room, and after dinner, wiping down my dining table and bringing them back out, even if it's to do 30 minutes of journaling to replace what would otherwise be 30 minutes of doom scrolling. I've been replacing video consumption on platforms like YouTube, where sometimes you could see a lot of vitriol or general incivility in the comment section, with less algorithmic content, such as podcasts, Substack newsletters, and even a few Patreon accounts. Where I do use YouTube, I'm trying to use my subscriptions tab more often than I use the homepage. So rather than being pushed content that's perhaps viral and viral for maybe not always the best reasons, I've been focusing on following the content creators who not only produce thoughtful, insightful videos, but also the creators who take the time to manage and set boundaries around their comment section so that I don't even accidentally click on the comments and just see moral outrage and people screaming at each other and making a range of vile personal attacks. One of the YouTube channels that I've really been enjoying is Bookish Mandy, who I discovered a couple of weeks ago when Alison from Little Coco Studio gave her a shout out. And while I've often been a little bit too mentally shattered to write meaningful comments on her videos, I've just really loved them. And in particular, from her channel, I've discovered that there are such things as solo RPGs. And in particular, I heard her recommendation for an RPG called Koriko. And I went and got the digital copy of that game. And I'm really excited that one of the things I could do to replace my doom scrolling is to play a solo RPG. So in this particular one, it's based on Kiki's Delivery Service, which is possibly one of my favorite films of all time. And you play a 16-year-old witch who has moved to a new town in order to join the community and make a positive impact on the world. And this whole process is explored via drawing tarot cards and stacking dice while journaling about the encounters and experiences that you have. I don't think I could have imagined a better game for me and my interests. I've not only been enjoying Mandy's videos, but I am so excited to try the different solo RPGs that she features on her channel. I've really been journaling and planning with a very different kind of energy. Rather than simply treating things as, oh, I'm just maintaining my life, 3 months left of the year. Every book that I'm keeping, I'm constantly thinking, what has served me well in this past 9 months of using this planner? What am I simply ticking off for the sake of ticking things off? And maybe they've never been useful or they've outlived their usefulness. And I can release those practices and perhaps introduce new ones. And I think that's the beauty of planner season. I completely respect people who are baffled by why anyone is thinking about their 2026 planners when we've barely entered the last 3 months of 2025. As a lifelong over planner, I adore the practice of getting my planners so early and having the opportunity to think introspectively, to interrogate critically about what has worked for me, what can be let go, and what I need to introduce in my life. In my last video, I shared how I've begun decorating my 2026 hobonichi cousin, which will be my second time using a cousin, but one that I'm moving into after a 9-month break after finishing my 2024 spring start. And with the lessons of keeping that journal in mind, and as well as all the wisdom that I've gleaned from maintaining a multi-book system in the past 3 quarters, I am so excited about all the things that I intend to do with this book. I'll link in my video description below some of those ideas that I've had already in my last 2 videos, in which I systematically break down what would valuably serve me in this season of my life. But I haven't dived in to start drawing out spreads or templates, even though every bone in my body is screaming out to do that right now. I know that things could change a lot in the next 3 months before January 2026 rolls around. And I want to hold myself back and give myself the flexibility to not lock myself into any template systems or spreads, but instead to allow different needs of my life to emerge, to clarify, so that come January, I can dive into this book with as much intentionality and less rigidly self-imposed pressures to maintain certain templates that I already drew out 3 months earlier. So now that I've talked about my daily journals, I would love to share with you my occasional journals. So this year, I've also been having a lot of fun in my traveler's notebooks. Indeed, one of my videos from earlier in the year offered a tour of my entire traveler's company collection. And I confess that I had some guilt of picking up beautiful traveler's notebooks with the intention that I would dedicate that book to a special interest, activity, or theme. And yet I was hoarding those books and not actually using them. In that video and other ones in which I've mentioned my traveler's notebooks, I have been so humbled and grateful to this community for offering some of the most creative, novel ideas for how I could make the most of these stationary items that are not designed to languish on a shelf like I'm a dragon hoarding my gold, but actually how I was going to use them to lead a joyful life. So, here in my Traveler's Train Tokyo Station exclusive cover and insert, I've been using this as a family travel scrapbook. Because I do keep daily baby toddler journals, I didn't feel the need to make this very narratively rich. So it's not a travel notebook or travel journal in the sense that I'm writing reams and reams about what we got to, what train we caught, what cities we visited. But it's really just a scrapbook and photo album of our holidays. Now, that doesn't mean that I won't come back in the future and maybe jot down some words based on the extensive records that I've kept about our holiday in my other journals and even my digital records. Nevertheless, this was a place for me to really play with collage and play with reliving my precious memories. So I'd always collect a folder full of ephemera, ticket stubs, postcards, and of course, my phone full of photographs. And when I came back home, I had the opportunity to walk back through some of my favorite moments from my travels. So I would cut out images from the brochures that I picked up. I would tip in the entire guide of the most incredible ryokan that we stayed in, all while curating my absolutely favorite photographs from our trip. Now, I confess earlier this year, I did fall off this book and I just wasn't prioritizing updating my travel journal and blocking out the time that I physically needed in my calendar in between my work, my YouTube, in order to properly work in this journal. But in the last couple of weeks, Alison in her Patreon shared how she was starting an intentional project to update her Japan travel journal. And it was the real motivation that I needed to not let this book languish, but to give myself the very nourishing practice of coming back, even if it's spending just an hour to update one page. During this year, I finally decided not to baby this Kyoto exclusive traveler's notebook, but given its beautiful dark navy color, I made it my cruise journal. So when we went to America in April, my son and I met a really lovely couple who told us about how they've visited our hometown on a half-year cruise all around the world. And my son asked me, what's a cruise? So I showed him photographs of cruise ships and I showed him the Disney cruise, and he begged me to book one. And so, as someone who suffers from intense seasickness and an introvert who is terrified at the idea of big crowds and the inability to escape, a cruise was not at all on my radar of the sort of thing that I wanted to do in my life. Like, zero interest in cruising. But when your 2.5-year-old looks at you with his puppy dog eyes and begs you to take him on the Mickey Mouse ship, how do you say no? And then, very unexpectedly, after booking our Disney cruise, Disney cruises became an intense, focused interest for me. I started binge watching vlogs and guides about Disney cruising. I studied all the activities, the food. I even watched a documentary about a Disney cruise ship being built, and I went and read up on the history of the particular ship that we're going to be sailing on in early 2026. So this became my cruise journal in which I shared all of my research and my excitement, largely in part because I didn't want my partner to divorce me because he was so sick of me gushing about this to him, but instead I could have a book that I gushed to. I am deliberately leaving a few pages in the back of my book empty so that I can take this book onto the cruise ship with us and actually update it with the ephemera that I collect and the photographs that I take. Last but not least, in April, my good friend Libby happened to be in Japan for a work trip, and she offered to purchase for me the Love and Trip Red Traveler's Notebook from Traveler's Company's flagship store in Nagameguro. And I jumped on the opportunity because it's about half to two-thirds of the price of how much this book costs to purchase in Australia. And at first, this passport notebook, which is my first and so far only passport size traveler's notebook, I left blank, waiting for a reason to fill this book to come along. I ended up taking this traveler's notebook to my first Southeast Queensland Journal Keepers in person community meetup. And because we had a whole day working together on our books and journals of our choice, I started decorating this journal while there at my first ever meeting. And it organically evolved to become my stationary hobby junk journal. So that day, I took a stamp of the official Southeast Queensland Journal Keepers stamp, and I met a really lovely friend there called Jo, who shared with me her ink collection. And I wrote down the names of all of my favorite inks in her ink swatch book. Later, we had the pleasure of meeting yet again at another fountain pen meet, where she brought me several of these by my request as generous samples. The members of this Journal Keepers Club are just some of the most incredible, talented people I've ever met. And many of them shared their little creations. And I use this book as a shrine to keep some of my most treasured items, stickers or ephemera that they've shared with me. My most recent collaboration has been with a washi tape shop, and I shared how when I received my order from them, I was immediately blown away by their quality and the originality of their art. Every single one of my tapes were individually gift wrapped with a stunning tissue paper with a sakura design. And I made an entire spread pasting in that beautiful wrapping paper that I didn't want to just throw away and putting in the sticker elements from their business card, as well as a couple of pieces from the tapes themselves. I have a craft folder that Libby picked up for me. And herein lives a lot of the little cards and stickers that I've received from stationery friends, Happy Mail, as well as my planner purchases. This little book has been such low pressure and slow energy to maintain, but it's one that every time I flip open, every time I paste in a new sticker sheet that I purchased, new washi roll that I purchased, or jotting down some writing with a new fountain pen or a new ink, it just always puts a smile on my face. And then some of you will know that in the past month, I've moved into a Filofax Personal Malden in the ochre color as my new commonplace binder. I'll link to the full video in which I set this up and offer a tour of what all the elements are. And it's been going strong as I've been really intentional about blocking out half a day or a full day every 2-3 weeks when my schedule allows in order to work on writing new entries or reading and researching new books, poems, plays to include in this commonplace book dedicated to the theme of decolonial theory and praxis. One element that I added to this commonplace book was that I wanted it to be a full sensorial experience. So I did go down to our local beauty store and I spritzed this beautiful Maison Margiela perfume onto this little fragrance card. And I've tucked it within this pocket so that when I open up my commonplace book, I get hit with this wonderfully earthy scent. In the coming month, I will offer a more detailed update of how my commonplace book is going and how it has evolved and grown. So all that brings me to my lineup for 2026, which in my recent videos, I have showcased when my order from Hobonichi arrived. So I'll have my daily toddler journal here in this tried and true A6 techo system. But I'm also challenging myself to maintain an A5 cousin for all the other aspects of my life outside of my role as a mother. I'm going to bring in the aspects of my work and health and wellness Hobonichi Weeks planners that have added value and ease into my life. And I'm going to integrate them into the spreads within this cousin, particularly the spreads that in the past I've struggled to come up with uses for or struggled to maintain. Given how expensive Hobonichi planners are becoming each and every year, I really want to challenge myself to make full use of all the spreads and pages within these two books, including some of the really interesting pages in the back that I've always scratched my head and not been sure what to do with. I'm going to see if I can come up with ideas to fill out these pages so that I can really have a good go at making this charming book work for me. This is such a hopeful time of year for me. Even when I am struggling to keep my head above water at work and with teaching, having these books have not only helped me cultivate more peace and joy in my busy life, but it gives me so much optimism for what kind of life I could build in the coming year. If you care to share, I would love to hear what's happening in your life and your world in this season. What are you looking forward to in your stationery hobby or otherwise in the last 3 months of 2025? For me, next month, I will be turning 40. So I am really excited to plan a couple of celebrations with close friends and family, and also maybe take a little trip away with my partner and my son. It's not every year that we experience a milestone birthday. And this particular one has put me in a very reflective and introspective mood to think about everything that I achieved, everything that I survived, and all the ways in which I have grown throughout my 30s. I cannot wait to share the last 3 years of this year with all of you. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take really good care until then.